find a library. Hi, who's ever here? I'm trying to, it's making me sign in now to my Amazon in order to read a story, and I can't remember my password. I'm sorry. Hold on, I'll be right there, okay? I'm trying. Okay? Who's ever here? Hi. Hi. Laura Lynn, hi. How are ya? Nice to see ya. Let me see if I can get in here, guys, okay? Hey, Captain. Taco. Been forever. And Tracy B. Okay, let me find my password or something. Hold on, guys. Okay? I was in the mood to read a scary story. Hold on. Amazon. Come on, Amazon. It hasn't made me sign in forever. Hey, Liza. Hi, Eva. Okay. Drive careful. It always seems like the ones that I don't save are the ones they ask for. And I always think I save them, and I don't. Dang it. Let's see. Forgot password. Okay, they're sending me a password, a one-time thing. Hold on, guys. Okay, I'm here. I got it. All right, here we go. All righty. Here we go. Do I sound a little off? Hey, Brian Clan. Okay, let's see. Where were we? I think we still have a story or two from Stephen King's son. So we're going to read one of those. All right. It's so hard with the signal here at the cottage. All right, let's see. All right, the Bryan clan. I hope this works. Okay, I don't think I read this one, did I? My old home movies showed me a life I never lived. I don't think I ever read this one. Okay. Stand you guys up. I have my cup, my mug. Here on Dave's phone. Oh, I know you're looking forward to that, Captain. Hey, Billy boy. I was there at the auction tonight, guys. Mainly the whole time, but I was listening and I was cleaning and stuff. So, and I was there at the true crime as well. So I know a lot of people were wondering. But I was there just I was doing stuff. Okay. My old home movies showed me a life I never lived. No matter what you see in the coming months, regardless of how convincing it might seem, know that I didn't want to die. I'm going to take all possible steps to prevent my predetermined demise. But if I don't make it, I need at least someone to know what really happened to me. Billy boy. I'm not, nor have I ever been, a remarkable person. I've never been terrible, but I never did great deeds either. To put it bluntly, ever since I left high school, I've found my place in eternal mediocrity. Honestly, being perfectly average didn't bother me much while growing up. Life was decent. I didn't struggle, and it felt like I had an overabundance of time to improve myself. But once I entered my 30s, the time I'd wasted started to wear on my confidence, and a bout of anxiety invaded my otherwise peaceful existence. Hi, Joyce. Let me do my inhaler. Maybe it'll help my voice a little bit. It seems like I'm always doing something, right? The inhaler, or taking a drink. Hold on, just take me a second. I got it right here in my purse. In order to make myself feel better, I decided to look through my old home videos, figuring that maybe I could get an inkling as to where I lost my passion for living. I dug through my parents' basement while they were at the market to look for the long since forgotten memories. Okay, let me do the inhaler now. Shaking it, shake, 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 shake. And one more. There we go. We hadn't filmed anything since the death of VHS tapes back in the early 2000s. But with some luck, the infinite procrastination abilities possessed by my father meant that both the tapes and the player still waited idly by the dust-covered boxes. After a long search and a couple of coughing fits from the dust clouds, I found a box marked Home Videos. The box was full to the brim with old tapes and the player itself. It was far more than I ever remembered filming, but it already started to satisfy my hunger for nostalgia. Hi, Nora. I felt confident that I'd find at least some inspiration and drive within the films. So with little hesitation, I eagerly brought them home to my one-bedroom apartment and connected the old player using a ton of adapters to make it fit modern televisions. I picked up the first tape labeled Adam Davies Highlights 1985 to 2006 and inserted it into the player. Though some of the footage was more than 3 decades old at that point, the tape itself was rather new, or at least as new as VHS tapes could possibly be. It meant that someone had transferred the footage to a newer tape to preserve the film, probably my mother. It had to be rewound, and as it did, I poured myself a glass of cheap whiskey while listening to the loud whirring sound of the tape being dragged back to its beginning. Then I hit play. A poorly focused picture came to view, partially covered by the date, reading January 5th, 1985. It was myself as a baby, barely out from the womb, and my mother was the person behind the camera. She cooed. Yep, cheap whiskey. She cooed and made funny hand gestures to get me to smile, which I diligently did as she laughed in joy at her wrinkly little creation. I sat through half an hour of footage, watching myself grow up, and though I had no recollection of these events, it felt nice to see that I once lived a carefree life of joy and exploration. Everything felt amazing, and before I knew it, Christmas of 1989 had rolled around, one of my very first happy memories. 4 years old and wearing an oversized Santa hat, I sat on our carpeted floor and fiddled with a colorfully wrapped Christmas gift. Cheerful music played in the background, and a dog ran around, excited about the torn wrapping paper littering the floor. The dog eventually ran over to my young self and started to playfully pull on my present while I attempted to push it away, all the while laughing my heart out. It was a wonderful scene to behold, and though I had a vague memory of that day, my first Christmas to remember, I had absolutely no recollection of ever owning a dog. Don't get me wrong, I love dogs. Oh, thank you, Debbie. That's so sweet of you. Thank you so much. You didn't have to do it, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see. I always wanted one, but due to horrible allergies that developed during my childhood, my parents always kept me away from the furry and lovable creatures. My first thought was that the dog belonged to some other family member. But as the years went by, the dog proved a faithful companion and made several appearances on the tape. Though the footage was clearly real and I was the center of it, I couldn't for the life of me remember the dog. He, Doug, followed me around until the age of 12, where it suddenly stopped showing up on the tape. Presumably passed away from old age, but he wasn't discussed any further in any of the other clips. Now that's weird, a dog he doesn't even remember. I kept watching through my primary school years, then high school, and finally college. Everything was exactly how I remembered it. Every minute, every minute detail matching my memory of life. Everything except for the dog. As the tape neared its end, the date read October 7th, 2006. I was filming myself out with some colleagues from my part-time job. We were just having a few drinks after work, and though it wasn't a particularly exciting evening, I remember feeling so happy, absolutely certain of my place in the world. Everyone was laughing, and we seemed to have a genuinely great time. The evening went on, and my memory turned hazy, while the footage turned sloppier. As it often goes with an overabundance of alcohol, there were holes in my memory from that night. The screen cut to black for a few seconds, and once the picture returned, someone was filming me from the other side of the bar. Whoever held the camera, they weren't one of my friends, nor did I seem to pay them any attention. Let me get a sip of my water, guys. Gotta lay you down. I'll take some of the water. Ryan Clem, if you're still here, what was that whiskey you would drink? And remember, I got some, but I didn't like it. I can't remember what it's called. But you told me I was supposed to savor it, and I think I had just downed it or something. I don't know, it was a couple years back. I don't remember. Okay, let's see. On the footage, I still sat with a couple. On the footage, I still sat with a couple of my colleagues at the table, just finishing up my final beer before getting up to pay the tab. As we left the bar, the cameraman followed us, keeping his distance. We still didn't acknowledge his presence. Unbeknownst to us, a stranger had gotten a hold of my camera, and in my drunken state, I never realized. He kept following us down the street as my friends dropped me off into a taxi. The clip ended, and the screen cut to black for a full minute. I wondered if the tape had reached its end, but the timer kept counting up. Once the picture returned, I was met by a dark scene. The camera was pointed towards a dimly lit road and slowly panned along the street. Small pieces of debris and chunks of cloth littered the road, all accompanied by a vague crackling sound in the distance. Before long, the picture showed a mangled car wreck, partially on fire. Ooh. The cameraman moved closer to the wreck. I gasped in shock as I saw the severity of the crash. The driver's head had been smashed beyond recognition by the steering wheel. He'd suffered a quick, unexpected death, but I, the passenger, was still alive. It zoomed in on my mangled body as I desperately tried to get free from my seat. But I was stuck under twisted metal, and my broken legs had been caught within it. The fire spread slowly at first, and the cameraman stood by idly watching as it reached my body. Well, thank you, Taco. That's so sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much. And you don't have to do that. Neither one of you, but that's very sweet of you. Let's see. Still, I didn't notice anyone filming me. The fire started to spread quicker, and I screamed in agony as it climbed up my body towards my face, my clothes fusing to my skin, and my face charring from the heat. After the fire had burned away most of my skin, killing each of the nerve endings, I stopped screaming, though I never stopped moving. Not until my muscles had stopped functioning did I finally go quiet. Oh, this is giving me chills. Could you imagine pulling out some old VHS tapes and you're seeing all this on here? Let's see. I'm not sure how long the scene lasted, nor did I care to go back and check. I sat frozen in fear as I listened to each second of my pleading screams until the moment I fell silent and finally died. My life had ended on camera the 7th of October, 2006. That was just the end of the first tape. I sat speechless, trying to figure out if I had fallen victim to some sick prank or if the footage showed an alternate version of myself that never made it out of college. I dug out another tape and read the title. Adam Davies, Highlights, 1985 to 2002. With extreme trepidation, I removed the first tape and inserted the second into the player. Be it morbid curiosity or a desperate need to find answers, I decided to watch another. The footage was almost identical to the first tape, but no dog ever showed up in the film. Instead, the only notable change to my life was the fact that my grandfather died in 1999 instead of 1993, and that the color of my first car changed from black to red. I kept forwarding to the very end of the tape, only watching bits of clips along the way. Once at the end, the day was dated November 15th, 2002. It was a party, and though too young to legally drink, it hadn't stopped me from enjoying the occasional house party. I remember leaving the place around midnight after being rejected by my crush and walking the 2-mile journey home alone in the dark. As I walked, someone followed me in the distance, filming me without my knowledge, just as with the first tape. I crossed the street and took a shortcut through an alleyway and was immediately cut off by a hooded figure. The scene was filmed from too far away to hear what was happening, but the hooded person pulled a gun, and I lifted my hands up in response and immediately froze. Whether it was supposed to be a robbery or a hostage situation, I didn't know. I just kept holding my hands up high while the robber erratically waved the gun around. Before I could defuse the situation, the gun went off and hit me point blank in the throat. I fell to the ground, clutching my throat. While I lay there, desperately trying to slow down the bleeding, the cameraman approached me with slow, patient steps. This time, I noticed the stranger approaching, and I stared into the camera as I gasped for air, unable to call out for help. It took me less than a minute to bleed to death. The cameraman continuously got closer to my panicked face until the moment I took my last gargled breath. Then it cut to black. Hi, Mary. I was wondering if you were going to come. It's good to see you. I was thinking about you tonight. I thought, I wonder if Mary will come. In 2002, I died alone on the street, never knowing why. The same scene kept repeating itself for each of the recordings. Every time. It is Tracy B, isn't it? These are such pleasant stories. Every time, small details were changed. Memories that didn't make sense. Things that didn't happen. But they always ended with my untimely death. On September 29th, 2004, I drowned as my car plunged into the river. The windows didn't open, and I couldn't break through the windshield. On January 13th, 2005, I fell off of a cliff and broke my legs while hiking alone in a neighboring city. Is this person in the Twilight Zone? The fall caused an open fracture, which severed one of my arteries, and it took me a full hour to bleed out as I desperately tried to crawl for help. 4 deaths each filmed by a stranger, never offering a helping hand, never speaking a single word. I returned to my parents' place with the box of tapes and demanded to know what the hell was going on. They took one glance at them and denied knowing about their existence. Despite my father's extreme laziness, he'd long since gotten around to digitizing the footage, putting it on a hard drive, and storing it in a fireproof safe. This is a brutal story. This guy has had a lot of brutal deaths. They showed me the home videos they made, and everything appeared just as I remembered it, with no horrific death at the end. Mary. The tapes had to have been put in the basement recently, as a flood had destroyed most of the stuff stored there only a year before while I was abroad. Whoever had put the videos there, it wasn't my father. Following the conversation with my parents, my first instinct was to throw the tapes in a fiery pit and forget they ever existed. But saner thoughts prevailed. I had to talk to the police to figure out who had made them, and more importantly, how. I loaded them into my car, checking over each of the titles once more, when I noticed one marked Highlights, 1985 to 2020. I stopped, dead in my tracks, and just stared at the tape in my hand. It was bizarre enough to hold a cassette dated in the future, but the fact that I already knew its ending horrified me even further. After what felt like an eternity of contemplation, I decided to see what the tape had to offer. A glimpse into my near future, for better or for worse. I have a feeling it's going to be for worse. If it revealed any details, maybe I would get the chance to escape whatever fate had in store for me. I stared intently at each memory depicted on the television screen, desperate to look for any deviations from my memory. If I was lucky, it was another reality altogether, but no matter how hard I tried to look for any discrepancies, it perfectly matched my life as I knew it. Once the tape got to December 2019, I took a deep breath and paused the video for a moment. Maybe I should have let the police deal with it. If fate was predetermined, then how could I even prevent it? But I had to know what would happen to me. The urge was irresistible. I hit play once more. The date read December 17th, 2019, and the picture revealed a cold, gray hospital room. I was there, holding my unconscious mother's hand as she took her last breath and fell eerily silent, as if her presence had left the world. The doctor in the room assured me she didn't feel any pain, that she was at peace, but the actual cause of her death never came up. Whoever filmed it didn't seem to take part in the interaction. Just like with the other clips, the stranger simply observed us, unnoticed by anyone actually in the room. The clip ended rather abruptly, cutting to black, remaining empty for a full minute. Once it faded back in, the date read January 24th, 2020. I saw myself sitting in what looked like a dirty motel room, one I couldn't recognize. I kept my hands folded over my lap as I sat on the edge of the bed. I was clearly distressed and paid little notice to the cameraman in the room. It went on like that for a couple of minutes, me muttering some incomprehensible, panicked sentences, and the camera remaining focused on my hands. Suddenly I lifted my head towards the cameraman with pleading eyes. Please, I don't want to do this. Don't make me do this. I don't want to. I don't want to, I said with a trembling voice. The cameraman remained silent, but the look on my face said enough. I was horrified, and it was clear that whoever filmed me was also coercing me into doing something against my will. I lifted my hands up from my lap to reveal a knife. Just the run-of-the-mill pocket knife, but threatening nonetheless. My hand shook as I once more begged for mercy. I don't wanna. Please, don't make me do this. Then I directed my attention to the knife, and without hesitating any further, I plunged it into my wrist, dragging it up along my arm towards my elbow as I winced in agony. I sat motionless on the bed as vicious blood poured from the cut. The camera kept its focus on me as the life slowly drained from my body. Minutes passed, and I dropped dead on the floor, letting out a final breath before succumbing to blood loss. The tape ended with the familiar jagged lines and gray screen, with a high-pitched, monotonous beat, the only thing left to keep me company. Following the last tape, I headed straight to the police station and handed over the tapes. They were hesitant at first, but quickly came around as they saw the footage. Of course, their explanation was more within the realm of logical possibilities. That someone had altered the footage and created a doctored video, though they took it seriously as a threat to my life and swore they'd keep me safe while they looked into it. Let's see, what'd you say, Captain Lisa? Let me see. Let's see. I don't know. Hi, Ellen. I hate how this stops the chat. His life is a reality TV. Hi, Alicia, my boo. My foster daughter. Let's see. Unfortunately, without a perpetrator, it would be hard to do anything. I was left with little choice but to hide in my home, with all the doors locked and every window covered up. After getting home, I sat myself down by the phone and waited for the police to call me with any updates, though I knew if anything came up, it would take days, if not weeks. It's possible that it's another reality and that I'll be fine. Maybe it's just a sick prank and not someone that can literally see into the future. Those are all just hopeless thoughts, because about an hour ago, I received a phone call from my dad. He told me that my mom collapsed in the bathroom and that they're taking her to the hospital. He keeps reassuring me that she'll be fine, but I know better. In a few weeks, my mom will be dead, and then shortly after, I'll follow. Oh, now that was creepy, wasn't it? It's by Richard Saxon, Stephen King's son. He's quite a good writer, I think, isn't he? His life is a reality TV. Yeah. Wow. Very creepy, right? Let's see. Let's see how long this one is right here. Just going to read a little bit of this story here. It's from a book called In the Back Rooms, A Survivor's Story. It's by Benicio Mateo. And it says, I do believe they exist. And if they really do, pray that you are lucky enough to never fall there. Okay, the introduction. I heard the door ring. My receptionist pushed the button to open the door. I stopped looking at the closed entrance of my office and moved my eyes towards a man who was taking his coat and his hat. So the next appointment is in 2 weeks, he asked. That is correct. Thank you for today. I slowly opened my arms and raised my shoulders. That's what my job is supposed to be, I answered, smiling. He replied, he returned the smile, told me goodbye, and left. He replied the smile, told me goodbye, and left. I turned around, walked towards my desk. Taking up my water bottle, I started looking at my agenda, which laid open on the table. H, 1500 to 1615. Mr. John McSimon, paranoia, trouble sleeping, PTSD, ? I gazed at the clock. Mr. Garfield, who had just left my office, was strangely fast today. Usually he finished late. Not this time. Maybe he's really improving, I thought, as I took a sip from my bottle. It was May, and outside it was raining. The sky was covered in a thick light layer of clouds. Yet in the distance, I was able to see some light beams penetrating the gray formations. As I took another sip, I looked again at the time, 14:53. Putting down the bottle, I pressed the button that advised my secretary to let the next patient enter. After a couple of seconds, I saw the doorknob rotate. Alice's voice told a stranger that he could go inside. I smiled. It was a new patient. And since he was new, I was aware that I had to give him the best first impression possible. Mr. McSimon, pleased to meet you. Good day, sir, he replied with an unsure voice. It was very low. He was very probably intimidated, not by me physically, yet most of my patients had a similar behavior the first time they came here. Some, not only the first time. Please, feel like at home. First time? What? Oh, no. He smiled with an expression that was half sadness and half embarrassment. I am aware that I have to lay down there and tell you what happened. Yep, that is the first step in therapy. Can I use this word with you, right? He nodded a yes. Great. Then we can analyze together what happened and how I could try to help you. He was nervous, and I could tell this by the fact that he was biting his own lower lip. He sat down, and I did the same. An awkward silence fell into the room. Let's see how long this first chapter is here. Sorry, guys. I just know I get tired and don't want to read these, you know. So I don't want to start it if it's going to take a while. Okay, I'll just read a little bit of this first chapter. I'm not going to finish it. Chapter 1, The Accident. Okay, he broke the silence. Finally, he had been sitting there without saying anything for a couple of minutes now, and I was getting ready to ask the first question. Usually I prefer having them talk to me. It's more natural, especially the first time. I think I should start from the beginning. Yes, if you do believe it could help me understand the accident, or whatever you described with that word, the fall. The fall? Yes, I fell there. He took a deep breath and he started telling me what had happened. It was last November, and he was walking home after having visited a friend. As he was crossing an empty street, he fell. Yet when he got up, he noticed that something was off. He was not in Chicago anymore, nor he was outside. Truth be told, he was in some place that he swore had already visited before, maybe in a dream. And he started to describe the place. As he started to describe the place, I could see his eyes widen. His left foot started to move rapidly, almost unnoticed. He got up in an empty room. It was yellow, but not the same color that children use to draw the sun in the corner of a page. It was more like piss yellow. That was the word he used. The room had no door. He rubbed his eyes, and when he opened them, nothing had changed. He then noticed that his hands were wet. By looking around, he saw a small line of water following the wall behind him down, and around him, the carpet was wet. He cleaned his hands on his jacket, thinking that he had just landed in a pool of piss. I hate to keep saying that, but that's what this says. He sniffed a finger and was happy to find out that the fluid was, in fact, not urine. Yet he felt unsure if he wanted to taste it. Yet he felt unsure if he wanted to taste it, as its odor was similar to what he described as copper. I slapped myself in the face. Why? I thought that I was dreaming, or, I don't know, on some kind of trip. Had you been using drugs that day, or the days prior? No, I'm clean. I used to do coke some years ago, but it was only because the work turns were inhumane. When I left, I stopped. Yet he wasn't dreaming. He started to move towards what seemed like the place a door should have been present. Slowly, he looked over the side of the wall. He saw a similar room, again and again, and another time. It was as if the room was repeating itself. He couldn't believe it. He slapped himself again, this time harder, but nothing had changed. He went forward. Maybe, he reasoned, he could find the exit where it seemed that the weird room corridor was ending. As he was moving, he found out that the carpet on which he was walking over was wet everywhere, with at least an eighth of a foot, he stated. Of a foot? No, sorry, an eighth of an inch. My bad. Oh, okay. That's a little, less wet, I joked. He was stressed. I could surely tell that. I hoped that by joking, he could relieve some of his negative energy, but I failed. He did not notice my joke, or he did and decided to move on. Still, he continued with his story. He described the smell, horrible, as if the person who created that room wanted to make you puke. At least the temperature was normal. Outside that day had been freezing. But here, he was able to open his coat and loosen his scarf. He reached the end of the corridor. On his right, there was a hall. Therefore, he turned to his left, and he stood there in shock. He was shocked about what was there and what wasn't. Another similar room, and behind another one. There was nothing else. Room after room. He started moving faster, but still, wherever he went, he was still in that sort of weird, piss-looking place. At first, he walked faster. Then he ran. For around 15 minutes, he ran nonstop. It was weird. I've never run that much in my life, and I wasn't tired. He told me he was starting to think that he had gone insane. He then stopped. He sat down for a minute or two, not because he had to catch his breath, just to try to understand what was happening. As he sat, he tried to use his senses to help him. He concentrated. His sight. He knew he was in some kind of maze, a very big one. Maybe it was real, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe he was dead, but couldn't find it out by himself. He started to hate the piss yellow and the lack of furniture in the rooms. His smell, terrible, copper-like, wet. He was almost sure there were also some parts of the room that smelled of urine, but he reckoned that maybe it was his mind playing a trick on him. His touch. The carpet was wet, with a substance of unknown origin that didn't look safe to drink. Not that he was thirsty, just he didn't want to risk it. Also because he hadn't seen a toilet around. Maybe that could explain the weird odor of the room. Maybe it was rotten feces. He tried not to think about that idea. His taste. Heck no. He did not want to taste anything. Not by any chance. Still, he was sure that he wasn't hungry, nor thirsty, despite not having eaten that much on that day. He tried looking into his pocket, searching for his watch. Sadly for him, there was no trace of it. He was sure he had it in his pocket before. Its wristband was damaged, so not to lose it, he kept it in a pocket of his jacket, but there was no trace of it. Maybe it fell when he entered that weird place, or maybe he left it at a friend's house. He hoped for the latter. It was his favorite watch. His hearing. Now that he focused on it, he noticed something. A buzzing sound. It was monotonous, with some very small variations. He quickly found where it came from. The lights. Those were the producers of that sound. The humming from the lighting system was very low, but it was the only sound he could hear, and so it felt as if its volume was 10 times higher, or maybe even more, and he was scanning his surroundings within his ears. He noticed something. Another sound, very different from the buzzing one. It was more alive. Alive, like a person? Don't know. You didn't go and try to see who was making that noise? Heck no. Why not? Because I felt as if I was being watched. Maybe by humans, maybe by animals. And I was sure that if I could hear that thing, the chances of it hearing me were very high. I mean, it felt as if those rooms had been there for decades, and I was new there. But my guts, they told me that the thing out there was more expert of that place than I was. So what I did? Yeah. I got TF away. And it actually says T.F. away. I looked him in the eyes. I raised his shoulders and continued. I am no genius man, but I am clever enough to know when some situation is dangerous. In that place, it felt like, I don't know, death. You felt in danger? Yes, but not in a violent way. It was not like a clown tent or a killer's house. It was more in a forgotten way, you know? What do you mean? I was afraid of getting lost there. I already was, but I wasn't keen on remaining there. I had to get out of that place. I had to come back here, he replied, pointing his fingers to the ground. I see. I finished writing down a note in my small book. As a psychologist, I was used to writing notes fast. I was recording the session too. My patients know that, of course. It is written on my website, on the office door, and in the contract they sign for every session. I use the recordings to listen to the patient again and again when I need to find out what they are thinking at. Yet I still try to take all my notes in one go. So you started walking away from what you thought was the location of the sound. Walking? No, I ran. Weren't you scared that the person or animal could hear you running and run after you? Yes, but I didn't think about that at the moment. I was too busy trying to put as much distance as humanly possible between me and it. And how did it go? Horrible. He went into a section that was moister on the pavement compared to the previous ones. That meant that, of course, each step was joined by a splashing sound, and that thing surely heard the noise. I looked at the clock. Not that I was too annoyed with the story. Quite the opposite. I found it interesting. It's just that he had started describing, in a technical way, the rooms he was running into, and those were all the same. Sometimes he would stop for a second, during which I would take the chance to drink a little. I offered him something to drink, but he refused. He then completely stopped talking. We exchanged eye contact. His expression I couldn't understand. He put his hands over his head and turned it down. I asked him if he was all right, and he told me that he was. Of course, that was false. If he had been all right, he wouldn't have been in my office. He was struggling with something. I could see it. He then took a deep breath and continued. I then turned into a dead-end corner, he stated. I slightly changed my position on my chair. And what happened next? He told me that he couldn't go forward. He was stuck. He thought he was done for. He could hear the animal getting closer and closer. He could hear the steps on the moist. Splash. He had no chance to escape. Splash. It was near. Splash. He went to the end of the corridor and placed his back on the wall. He wanted to face the beast face to face. Silence had fallen on that place. Even the buzzing noise of the light seemed to fade. Maybe it was a prank, he hoped. He prayed for that to be the case. A prank of a sick-minded person. Otherwise, he would have been done for. He had no girlfriend, yet he would have been surely missed by his parents. Maybe they would have sought after him. Maybe, he hoped, they would arrive in seconds and scare the beast away. That would have been potentially his last chance of escape. They could have killed the animal, or scared it, or even distracted it. What if the search party would also become lost here as well? They would have surely been doomed too. Or maybe they knew how to escape. The splashes were very near. The beast was around the corner. He pressed his back on the wall. Maybe if he stayed still, he would not be seen. He had no weapon. The most similar thing to a knife that he had with him were his house keys. He grabbed them, keeping them very tight in his fist and close to his body. He was ready, he thought. Not ready to win, yet he hoped to at least be able to injure the beast. Maybe it would stop it from harassing other lost people. He would sacrifice himself for unknown others. As he was thinking about this, he noticed something moving near the corner of the wall. A shadow, getting bigger and more defined, definitely getting nearer. He was sure that potentially his underwear could soon become wet. Then he saw it. It was nothing he had ever seen. It surely wasn't human, but it wasn't an animal either. At least not a dog, nor a wolf or a bear. It was as if a tree had been separated by its leaves, and the trunk and branches had been painted completely pitch black. Where he thought the face was, no identifiable features could be found. No eyes, no hair, no lips, mouth, nose, or chin. It was literally like a broken branch. The fact that it was so inhumane scared him to the bone. It sent shivers down his spine. The dark tree was not like anything he had ever seen. Not even the most wicked and corrupted horror book had something as scary as that thing. It was as if the entire universe had condensated all its negative feelings into a living being. and that being was getting closer to him. At first he tried to remain still, but the beast was still coming forward. He then abandoned that strategy. He wanted to defend himself, but his hands were planning something else. At first he was able to keep his hands forward, as to put his keys between him and that thing. But as the beast drew closer and closer, he felt as if it was overpowering him. He felt negative energy around him. He described it as a sensation of doom, hopelessness, defeat. The beast was near. Only a couple of yards separated the two. He was shivering. It was impassable. The legs of the beast pushed forward. Another step. It was standing on two branches, and it had 5 arms other than the head. 2 on the left side, 3 on the right one. Oh man, this is getting pretty weird. One of the branches on the right side looked slightly backward. He knew it was going to strike soon. It felt so natural. When is this going to be over? I'm tired of this one. I'm sorry, guys. I don't like this one. It was good for a while, but I don't know. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys. Guess I'm going to hang up now. Okay? And go to bed. Hope y'all can sleep well. And I hope you have good dreams. And I hope you have a wonderful day, night, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And I really appreciate you coming and listening. Sorry, I start to read and then I get bored with it, right? Thanks, guys, for coming. Thank you for the super chats. Good night, Mary. You stuck it out. Yes, Mary. Thanks for coming, Mary. Thank you, whoever was here. Okay? Night, all. See you next time.